Good evening. Captain Brandon Parham here. I know that you all are used to Captain Holly Weaver. However, she has moved on to bigger and better things and is doing really well in CGSC. Um, so tonight I'm going to introduce my new co-host, Sergeant First Class Randall, and I'll go ahead and bring him on. So Randall, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing good, sir. How you doing? How you doing?
Good. Man, I can't complain. It's a Wednesday on a short week. Good to go.
You sure we getting this short week, sir? I mean, I heard it in the background that we wasn't going to get it. It got me nervous.
No, we got the 4-day for sure.
Okay.
Friday and
Okay.
Monday.
Okay.
Friday
Okay.
was for sure. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
At least we know.
I'm excited to be here. We have a great show tonight, and so without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so tonight we have Dr. David Shahbodaghi, Major in the Army Reserve. He was an HPSP recipient, also did a master's in public health. He has spent some time in the active duty Army, tropical medicine fellowship. He has done a lot of things. So I'm really excited to get his experience on and take on the Army. What do you think, Sir Randall?
Man, I'm ready for it. I'm ready to see what he got. It almost feels like this live stream is more of a getting ready for a big matchup or something like that. Basketball or football. It's not a Cowboys game, but it's something like that.
Oh, the Cowboys going to win on Sunday.
Oh
anyway.
Lord, that's not getting to that.
All right, without further ado, Major Shahbodaghi. Sir,
Hello.
good evening. How
Yes,
are you?
sir. How you doing?
Good to see you both. Thank you so much for having me on the program. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Welcome from Kansas. I know you're in Canada up there.
Close. Northeastern Montana.
How are you doing on this Wednesday, sir?
Good, very good. It's about 9 degrees Fahrenheit here. Winds about 20 miles an hour out of the north, and about 4 inches of snow on the ground. So that's nice.
I thought you were
a normal
doctor,
day in Chicago.
Yeah, normal day in Chicago. That's right.
Over here, meteorologist. I thought you were a doctor.
Well, I wear many hats. What can I say?
Absolutely. Well, sir, we're super happy to have you. And if you don't mind giving us your backstory.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to. So I will kind of share just a little bit, maybe kind of family background first. So often, as happens, I come from a military family. My uncle on my mother's side was an Army doc, a Army family medicine physician, who was also a HPSP scholarship recipient. And so all the years that I was growing up, I heard a lot about the HPSP scholarship, heard a lot about Army medicine, Army training. And that was extremely both informative and formative, because in your youth, the things that people tell you tend to put a lot of weight on those. And I always heard about what great training my uncle got and what wonderful experiences and professional development that he received while he was in the Army. And so that kind of set the stage for me, really. And so I did my undergraduate degree at Muskingum College. Have a Bachelor of Science degree in Neuroscience, Bachelor of Arts degree in History. And so all the years I was in college, though, my uncle was always talking to me. He's always like, David, you need to be thinking about HPSP scholarship and getting involved with the Army. And so that was always kind of on the forefront of my mind. And so after I received my acceptance letter to medical school, I went to West Virginia University. I was a mountaineer. And once I had my acceptance, I did go to my local recruiting station in Columbus, Ohio, talk with the AMED recruiting team there, and go through the application process for the HPSP scholarship. and ultimately did successfully receive a 4-year HPSP scholarship, and went on to West Virginia University, did my MD degree as well as a master's degree in public health, concentrations in occupational environmental health and safety, and global public health. And so, and then of course, we'll talk more on the program, but did go on to further Army education, did my residency in family medicine in the Army, was chief resident, and also did some additional training in tropical medicine in the Army as well. So.
It's been a while since I messed with these controls over here.
No worries. No worries.
Yeah. Great background. Yeah. And so you know, I met you, I think, first time in St. Louis at the AAFP.
USAFP,
right?
Uniformed Services
Yep.
Academy of Family Physicians. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I was so blown away by your resume and like all of the things you've done with the tropical medicine, which is something that I had never heard of at all.
Yes.
And
So, Randall.
so being able to hear some of the things that you've been through with the Army, and actually while we're doing this, for those of you out there, I'm gonna put this banner down here and starting Randall's contact information here at the bottom. LinkedIn, Instagram. You can call or text him, email him anytime. He's up day and night all the time.
This is true.
Right?
This is true. I don't sleep, so I'm ready for anything.
Absolutely. So Randall, if you don't mind, can you give us a little back, just like the basics of the HPSP program, or I say program. I hate when people do that, right? Because it's P is program. Can you just give us a little rundown of what HPSP is?
Well, in layman's, I like to put in everything in like a simple Barney style language. It's a scholarship that you have somebody that wants that's going for their bachelor's in biology or any type of nursing, anything like that, and they want to pursue the med school. This is a perfect program to get you into get a full 100% paid for med school. And yes, it is an active duty program. I always like to put that out front. It is active duty program, but with that, it gives you that med school, and then it gets you on into residency, and then you'll be in active duty going into, and you can follow into a fellowship. And to me, from what my experiences with people who go through the HPSP, it's like the sky's the limit as far as within any AOC that they go into. This HPSP program is definitely a pathway to anybody's AOC that they want to get into. It's definitely a solid pathway, active duty wise, to accomplish those goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Shahbodaghi is a product of that. So just to add to that, the $2,600 a month, the stipend, right? So, and then the full
$2,600. Man,
yeah,
this has gone up. This has gone up a lot. I was getting by like $1,800.
Yeah, it's going up
every year.
Yep, $2,600 now.
Wow.
Yeah, so the stipend, and then you have the reimbursement of the books, the fees, and so with that, sir, you are the subject matter expert here, right? So you've been through the program.
Yeah.
Can you explain to us what your experience was while going through medical school while you were on the scholarship?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I signed a 4-year scholarship, which, as Sergeant Randall was speaking about there, that will give you a 100% tuition and fees payments for your schooling, which, as everybody knows, medical school is extremely expensive. In particular, if you're out of state or if you're doing an osteopathic program, you're looking at substantial cost, and maybe $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, depending. And there are very limited scholarships available, generally speaking, not about HPSP, but generally speaking, limited scholarships available to go to medical school. And so that does make it challenging. Unlike undergraduate, they got a scholarship because, you name it, you spent some time basket weaving, there's probably a scholarship for that, right? Medical school, very, very limited scholarships. So that's one of the things that makes HPSP programs so attractive, is that there is this wonderful scholarship available. Not only does it include full tuition, not only does it include all your fees, not only does it include all your textbooks and your materials. You need a lab coat, done. You need goggles, done. You need a stethoscope to see some patients with, done. It includes all that. Not only does it include all those things, also covers your cost of living. The last thing you want to do when you're in school is trying to work a second job at Kroger's, no, you don't have time for that, right? You got to be focusing on your education. And so you do get, which I just found out, $2,600 a month. Wonderful, very good stipend. And that will more than cover, in most places in the United States, the cost of your room, board, and obviously your meals. Now, I'm saying you're not going to be on a champagne budget, but obviously that's going to be more than adequate to meet your basic needs and allow you to focus on your number one job when you're a student, which is to be a student. You don't want to be trying to do other things. And so all that said, I had a very good experience. Had very good support from the Office of the Surgeon General in Falls Church, Virginia, who manages the program. And my contact person there was Miss Patricia Norman, and I talked to her very frequently. And I believe she's still there. She's just getting ready to retire, and did a wonderful job managing my time there, and was able to really focus on being a student, and had a wonderful experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that rundown, sir. And so with the HPSP, there are the 45 days in between your, summers, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. So we run into a lot of questions with like, what am I going to do? There's only the one summer between the first year and the second year, and then after that, You're doing clinicals. So what was your experience when it came to doing the clinicals, doing the direct commissioning course, and the basic officer leaders course?
Yeah, absolutely. So so that was a common question I had as well, because as Captain Parham was alluding to, you do have 45 days that you need to spend on active duty during the calendar year when you're on the HPSP scholarship program. And so that is often a common question. And so generally, this is how it works. If you're in a traditional MD or DO curriculum, the first 2 years are going to be didactic. The second 2 years are going to be clinical. The first year, you don't really have time to do much. And so you'll either, it depends, there's some options, but what most people do is they will go to the basic officer leaders course, the bullet course, in between the summer of their first and second years of medical school. So your first year, usually that 45-day ADT, which stands for active duty time, when you're on active duty orders, one bonus of that is you are being paid as an active duty second lieutenant. So your pay will jump several $1,000s a month, which is wonderful. Nobody's, nobody that I've met yet is opposed to getting paid more. And so that is wonderful, number one. So you can expect to attend the basic officer leaders course, which is 6 weeks of dedicated education on how to become an officer, right? So your roles and responsibilities as a lieutenant. In the Army, we train officers first, doctors second. And so your number one job when you wear the uniform of the United States Army, United States government, is to be an officer. And so there's nothing that the Army does better than train professional leaders. And so you will get a lot of dedicated education in military doctrine, training on how to be a team-focused player, a team-based leader. And those are skills that you can use for life, whether you're in the Army outside or, whatever your job is. Those skills are never wasted. So that's number one. I had a wonderful experience in BOLIC, and we could talk more in depth on that if you'd like, but I'll just move on. For the second year of your HPSP scholarship, most people do not have time to do anything clinical. And so most people, you're on ADT orders, but you're at school. And so you just get paid the 45 days for being at your school program, and you receive that paycheck. You take the letter to the dean. The dean signs off, yes, Dr. Shahbodaghi or medical student Shahbodaghi was here. He completed his coursework satisfactorily, and nothing negative happened. Done. So you get your pay, and then you're done. Your ADTs in your third and fourth year, you want to save those. So most people, what they do is those are used for what's called audition rotations. And so basically you have 45 days of active duty. As you get to your end of your third year, you kind of stack it. End of your third year, going into your fourth year, you want to use those two ADTs, those two 45-day periods of active duty, to go and visit a Army MTF, medical treatment facility, an Army hospital, basically, whether it's an Army community hospital, an Army medical center, MedSend, that's the highest level of Army hospital. And you'll want to use those for that time, because basically you're being paid on active duty, including travel, to go to and from your rotation location. And you want to use those, like, for example, in my case, I did two. As all medical students know, you do some audition rotations before you go to residency, whether you're civilian or you're military. But I did two ADT rotations, one at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and one at Fort Gordon, Georgia, over in Augusta, and at Dwight D. Eisenhower and at Womack Army Medical Center. And those were my audition rotations. You can do additional rotations beyond that. Like, let's say you're like, listen, I've been down to Womack at Fort Bragg. I've been to Dwight D. Eisenhower at Fort Gordon. But you know what? I'm hearing great things about the hospital down at Fort Benning, right? So you want to get down to Martin Army, check it out, see how things are going. Like, listen, you know, Fort Benning, close to the beach, some nicer things. I'm not into golf, don't want to be in Augusta. Okay, no problem, right? But you've already used your two rotations, no problem. You can go just as a third or fourth year, like you would normally, go and do the audition rotation. But the beauty of that is you do have those two 45-day periods of active duty in your third and fourth year. And I was medical student coordinator when I was at the residency program at Fort Gordon. We hosted lots of HPSP medical students. And I would say by and large, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't use those two ADT rotations in your third and fourth year.
Yeah, I mean, why would you not? The Army's paying for you to go see other places, right?
Amen. Amen. Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I like it. And so I think one of the big questions we typically get is how the match process during medical school differs from the civilian side. I know the HPSP match is a little bit early, so you kind of like don't have as much stress with everybody else on match day. Yes. But are you able to walk us through that a little bit, sir?
Absolutely, absolutely. So as I was mentioning, most medical students in the United States, whether you're military or you're a civilian, you're going to be kind of probably in your third year, you're going to be focusing in. You're going to be thinking, you know what, I'm loving pediatrics. I'm liking general surgery. You kind of getting a feel for what you like, and probably getting close to the end of third year, you're like, listen, I really think I want to do X, whatever it is, ENT. I'm really thinking I want to do general surgery, or in my case, family medicine. But you're going to be narrowing in on that specialty. And so, as I was just mentioning, I encourage you to do those active duty rotations. Get out to the Army hospitals, because remember, these are going to be the people that you'll be working with if you go there. So it behooves you. It's very much in your interest to go and rotate and really get a feel for it, because obviously I think all the Army programs are fantastic. For Army Family Medicine, the year that I went, I think it wouldn't have really mattered what program you would have gone to. You would have gotten a fantastic education. And I don't say that just because I was in the Army. I heard wonderful things about all of the programs. I was a faculty at the residency later, and so again, I'm very familiar with the inner workings of the program. But you do need to get out and do the rotations. If you're an unknown quantity, if you're somebody who has never been out rotated, like if it's me and Captain Parham, right? And Captain Parham goes out and he's rotating, he's checking everything out. They know him, they've seen him in the morning report. They're like, hey, Captain Parham, we saw you down at Starbucks. Like, yeah, I was there. I was at Fort Gordon. I was checking things out. Okay, who's gonna have the edge, Captain Parham or me, if I've never shown my face, right? So it's very clear what you need to do. You don't need to be a medical student to know that. That's just common sense. And so what I say is that, basically once you have your idea as you go into the end of your third year, you want to do these rotations. Once you've done your rotations in September, August going into September, the OTSG team really in September is going to ask you to make a selection. So what they're going to do is they're going to ask you, they're going to say, okay, medical student Shahbodaghi, please get on the match portal and put down what specialty it is that you want to match into. In my case, I'll just speak for myself. I put down family medicine. I didn't have any other specialties I was interested in. I really just focused on family medicine. And the Army has 6 family medicine residency programs. And each one has different number of slots, but total there's like 90 some slots available in Army family medicine. But we won't get too technical here. So similar to the NRMP, the National Registry Match Program, similar to that, there is a portal that you'll go to. The Army has their own. It's through the OTSG website. It's called MODS. But you go on there, and that's where you put your selection. Once you select, if memory serves correctly, there needs to be at least 6 or 7 options. I think it's 6 options. Because the Army doesn't want you to just say, listen, I only want to go to neurosurgery and Baton Rouge. Well, I don't know how many slots they're going to be, right, for neurosurgery and Baton Rouge. So you got to, we don't want you to only have one option. So basically what will happen is once you choose, don't hold me on this, but I believe it's around 5, 6, 7 slots, something like that. That is what there needs to be. If you do family medicine, you're great because there's 6 programs. There's plenty of options. Others, like let's say you did, let's say you did psychiatry. Maybe there's only 4 psychiatry residency programs. Then you will need to choose a secondary specialty, and you will need to rank that as well. So many people, if they do psychiatry or another ENT, there's only 3 ENT slots. 3 ENT programs. Then what they'll do is they'll put they'll put a TY, which is transitional year. And that's a traditional 12-month rotating internship, and there's lots of locations for those across the Army. Fort Gordon, William Beaumont at Fort Bliss, Texas, Tripler Army Medical Center in Hawaii. There's a lot of options there. So you need to have some backup options. And so that's something that you'll want to do. Then a month later, I believe is it October? Was it for the Army? Is it October 15th? Is that what it is? October 1st?
For the beginning of the fiscal year?
I think it's somewhere in there. I'm sorry, guys, don't quote me on this, but in the mid-fall, between October and November, I believe it's like October 15th, you will put in your residency selections. So in my case, I know I want to do family medicine. There are 6 Army family medicine residency programs. Each program has at least 6 slots, and then it depends on the year and a lot of factors of what determines how many slots there are. Basically, you will then go in just like NRMP, and you will match order your programs. So I'll speak for myself. Number 1, Dwight D. Eisenhower. That was my number 1 pick, and that's where I went. So I put number 1, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Army Medical Center, Fort Gordon, Georgia. Boom, number 1. Number 2, Womack Army Medical Center at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Done. Then you go number 3. I didn't go to Benning, but I heard good things. Okay, so Martin Army, Benning. Number 4, Joint Base Lewis McChord. I'm hearing good things. I want to, be close to Tacoma, Seattle. Check it out. Okay, number 4, and then you just basically, just like NRMP, which is the civilian version of the match, you just rank order your choices as you go down. And as Captain Parham alluded to earlier, there are some benefits to this. Number 1, if you're a civilian, you want to do family medicine, how many programs are there? I don't know, 1 million, right? I mean, I'm exaggerating, but there's hundreds of programs, right? Nice thing is if you were dedicated, you could go and visit all 6 Army family medicine residency programs. In fact, a gentleman the year ahead of me, Major Tyler Rogers, did just that. So he literally told me when I was a medical student, he's like, David, what do you want to know? I went to all the programs when I was a student. I was like, all the programs? He's like, yeah, there's 6 of them. I was like, okay, yeah, fill me in. What's going on in Tripler? He's like, yeah, it's amazing. Bad thing is you're on an island. I'm like, is that bad? He's like, yeah, it's, anyways. So you kind of go through, you kind of go through those options. And that's what makes it nice, is because it is a more, limited, but you have your choices, you're locked in. And I don't know the exact stats, but it's very high. Greater than 90% of people go to their top 3 choices for the match. And you can't say that about NRMP civilian match either. And so You do very well, and it's I think overall a good program. And as you both mentioned, it is a little bit of a stress reliever because you find out several months. The NRMP match is in March, and I think you're finding out like November 1st, November 15th. I don't remember the exact date, but you're finding out in the fall, mid to late fall, where you're going. So you have a 3 or 4 or 5 month jump start on your colleagues, right? I mean, if you know you're going to some place, like let's say you match into the program in Jacksonville, right? There's a Navy family medicine program in Jacksonville. Let's say you match there. Then you have a huge head start on all the other players in the game that are waiting until March 15th to find out where they're going for their match, right? So that lets you work on your housing situation. That lets you work on your moving situation. All the things that all the entanglements that people have. You can go ahead and work on those. So as I say, overall, I think very good program. And the folks at OTSG, Office of the Surgeon General, will not let you go too far astray. In fact, Miss Norman's called me. She was like, Lieutenant Shahbodaghi, make sure you get your choices in. I'm like, yes, ma'am, I'm working on it. I'm just kind of penciling it in. And sometimes it comes out on the wire because you don't know. You're like, listen, I'm hearing good things about Tripler. Do I want to go to Hawaii? You're like you're like Fort Bragg. They got the airborne. So you gotta weigh the pros and cons. But as I say, overall, very good program.
Listen, I've been to Fort Bragg. I don't think I could choose that one over Tripler.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So I want to pull up. Thank you so much for that rundown, sir.
Yes.
I want to pull up a couple of comments here, and so Captain Weaver, Major Weaver. I'm sorry,
Major Weaver.
I'm so used to Captain Weaver. Major Weaver says, "What's up, team?" She says that she's so proud right now. We are continuing your legacy here. So myself and Sergeant Randall, we are so glad that you set this up initially. And at the beginning of the show, we mentioned that you've been doing really great things at CGSC, and I mean, you're not that far away. Like, I haven't seen you since you left.
It's pretty weird.
Yeah.
We got so used to hearing, her coming in just with any type of highly motivating, quarrels or just comments or just anything, or just do a workout real quick, So yeah.
My favorite thing about Major Weaver is as commander, right? So you do all these things and you have all these little duties and all these other administrative stuff, right? But when I asked her to take command and fill in for me, every single time she came up with some type of motivational, like costume party, 3-day weekend. She came up with, for the last company training, these certificates for each person's personality. And I'll tell you, Major Weaver, we appreciate you, and we definitely we miss that motivation. So thank you so much for tuning in. And then I'm gonna go to Courtney Aquino. So Randall, you're very much acquainted with Sergeant Aquino here.
Mm-hmm.
She's asking if, for those of you that don't know, Sergeant Aquino and Sergeant Randall work directly together in the Kansas City Medical Recruiting Station. She's asking, sir, are there any other incentives besides the tuition? We talked a little bit about the lab coats and the equipment and the fees and these type of things.
Yeah.
What other things do you think besides the tuition were helpful for you?
Well, is the $20,000 sign-on bonus? Is that still part of the HPSP program?
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I figured
big one.
I figured you'd be like, listen, it's gone up to 100,000 inflation. Okay, no.
That one stayed the same.
So basically, just to recap for those that may have joined maybe like later on in the session here, it does cover 100% of your tuition, which is wonderful. 100% of your fees. Because remember, tuition's great, but there's all kinds of fees. They want you to have an activity fee. They want you to have a student recreation fee. And those are like, well, I'm talking like it's $5. Okay, the fees are like, when I was in school, this has been years ago now, I'm sure it's higher. It's like $1,000. You're like, $1,000 for the library? Whatever. Listen, that's how they get there. That's how they get it. So yes. So yes, you're going to have your full tuition, your fees. You will also have all of your supplies, right? So there's going to be all things you need. Now, you might think supplies. Okay, bear in mind, when you're in medical school, you're going to need a lot of stuff. You're going to need your lab coats. You're going to need your stethoscopes, your otoscope, you'll look in the ears, ophthalmoscope for the eyes. Those are expensive, guys. Those are like almost $1,000, just those two pieces of equipment, ophthalmoscope and otoscope. You're going to need a medical tape measure, a pen light. I mean, you know, all these things sound minor, but then you start adding them up, it's going to become very, very costly. And your civilian colleagues will be taking out loans to get those. So that's going to become rapidly expensive. Also, it pays for 100% of your required textbooks. So what does that mean? Well, you take the syllabus for the course, whatever is the required textbook or textbooks, plural, you just basically submit that along with your textbook receipts, and then they will reimburse all that. And as anybody who's been in any kind of education, medical or not, especially medical, textbooks very expensive. You start thinking quickly, wait a minute, maybe I should have been a textbook author, because this book's about $400, and that's just for one of them. So it becomes expensive extremely quickly, and it's kind of one of those things where you will find out very rapidly the cost of these educational materials. And so it does cover all that. As I mentioned, there is the $2,600 a month, what they call educational stipend, but that covers your housing situation, your food, all things that you need while you're in school, which is also wonderful. As far as other financial benefits, there is, if you sign a 4-year HPSP scholarship, there is a $20,000 one-time sign-on bonus. I always caution people that are going to do that. It's wonderful, but there are taxes, so that's sad. But besides taxes, it's a very, very wonderful thing. You know, listen, we all enjoy driving on the roads and having the fire department, so we got to pay taxes. So that's just kind of part and parcel. But I would say those are the main financial incentives. You do, of course, get the 45 days per year of active duty pay. At the time that I was second lieutenant, a long time ago now, or 13 years ago, it was around, I want to say 34,000. I can't remember all of it, because then you get BAS, basic allowance for housing, basic allowance for subsistence. So those are two non-taxable entitlements. Probably now, I would say it's going to be 4,000 plus, maybe 4,500. Do you have a guess, Captain Parham?
Yeah, I don't have an exact amount, but roughly about $40,000 a year for the stipend for the 9.5 months, and then the 10.5, or sorry, the 45 days. So it's roughly 40,000 ish.
Yeah, and then those 45 days you're being paid so basically at the time that I was in, essentially your stipend doubled. So basically, so you can just think about it. If you, at the time I was in, you're getting like $1,800 a month, and so when you go on active duty, it basically doubled. So whatever you're getting now, $2,600, double that, you're almost at 5,000 with BAS, BAH, and your active duty pay. So 45 days a year, you're getting that. I think those are all the financial incentives that I can think of.
Okay. Thank you so much. So we'll go to the next comment. So Randall, go ahead and read this one for me if you want.
Who's that? We got David Morris. He asks, how often are many doctors deploying, and do they embed together with medical units in other countries?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, David. Thank you for that. So deployment tempo, which is a military term that refers to how often you will deploy, is extremely variable. The reason for that is because it depends on what kind of unit that you are attached to. I'll kind of hit the common topics, the common questions right off the bat. When you're in medical school and when you are in residency, you are exempt from deploying 100%. So you will not be deploying, period. The reason for that is because you've got to get your education. before you can go out there on the battlefield and help save lives. We don't need people out there who are partially or undertrained. So, and you wouldn't want that if you were a soldier. You're like, listen, it's my first time. You're like, no, please, we don't go back. So when you're in medical school, when you're in residency, you will not be deploying. But of course, you'll be getting the education and the training, the skills, the tools that you will need to deploy, but you will not be deploying. And that is a frequent question. People often like, I don't know if I can do HPSP. You're like, well, why not? I just don't know if I can, take a year off my education to go to Afghanistan. We're not in Afghanistan anymore, but as an example. And so that's really honestly a misnomer because you are in a special protected status during your medical school time and during your residency. Once you finish your residency and you are board certified, at that point, then yes, you will be eligible to deploy to combat. I have deployed to combat. I deployed with the 42nd Infantry Division to CENTCOM, which is the Middle East. That's the central central command area of operations. So I am very familiar with the combat environment, and I am a combat veteran, as I said. So yes, you can be deploying if you're in a MTF. If you're assigned to a hospital, your chances of deploying are a lot lower than if you're assigned to what's called a line unit. A line unit would be like, let's say you're with the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. They frequently deploy, and so much higher possibility that you will deploy in one of those units. As far as the tempo, very, very, I would say extremely variable. Again, there's going to be a lot of factors, so it's hard for me just to give a broad overarching comment that will address everything. But what I will say is that the more specialized your unit towards combat arms, the more often probably that you will deploy. So if you're in the airborne, you're probably going to deploy more. If you're in the infantry, probably you will deploy more, both the combat as well as non-combat environments. You're like, non-combat, what's that? Well, you might go to Kuwait, for example. You could deploy as part of Operation Spartan Shield, go to Kuwait. You might deploy and go to Korea, to Area 1. That would be a deployment. You might go to UCOM and go to Poland. That could be a deployment. As far as whether you're embedded together with medical units of other countries, the answer to that is yes, you certainly could be. You wouldn't necessarily always be. When I was deployed, we were not 100% embedded together, but in very close proximity with assets of the British Army, and so we had some of their medical units. We also did host nation collaboration during some of my time in the Middle East with folks in Saudi Arabia. And so we work with host nation medical elements there very closely, medical doctors, as well as host nation nurses. So that's certainly a possibility. The combat operations are no longer active in Afghanistan, as most people know. But there are U.S. Army forces in Syria, U.S. Army forces in Iraq. Which are considered combat zones. Jordan is considered combat. Saudi Arabia, because of the threat from the Houthi rebels, has been considered combat since September 2019. And so yes, there are potentials for that. And I don't know about the UCOM area of operations if you go to Poland, but it's possible because the U.S. Army often works with NATO the NATO forces as well. So certainly possible. That you could be embedded with folks from NATO. So I hope that answers the question.
So with the deployment part, it's not always guaranteed that you would be going to the red zone. Pretty much, you can also be going over to a green zone. Like for example, yes. I was in a training exercise in Israel, and we had medical personnel from the Army collaborating with the Israeli Army as we was helping with their OCS candidates pretty much. But they also had an MTF out there, and they had Army personnel, helping out with them, moving their medical professionals up and just teaching them as well. So just it's not always you're going to go into the fight and everything like that. You could go overseas and it could consider it a deployment, but you're in the green zone area, seeing that just helping out and doing your medical profession in that sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so just to break it down, green zone, we're talking about non-combat roughly, and then red zone, combat related. Yeah. So I want to bring up Sergio Rubio. He said, I'm currently pursuing a biology and bachelor's. When should I join the Army so that I can use the HPSP? So, Randall, you want to answer that?
Well, in a recruiter's voice, I would say join now, but no. But if you're pursuing your bachelor's, depending on how far along you are, let's just say, for example, you're in your 4th year getting ready to graduate and stuff like that. Wherever you are, I would highly encourage you to get in contact with that AMED recruiter in that area. If you cannot get in contact, my information is down there below, right down here. Contact me and we can find out where you're located, and I can find the AMED recruiter, to help you out that's near your home and stuff like that. But as soon as pretty much if you have your bachelor's in biology and it's complete and you're applying for med school, I would say in that time frame, I would start like that January of your last semester. Go ahead and start getting hot and heavy on talking with that AMED recruiter about getting that process going for that next year.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Sergio, one of the big misconceptions is that you have to have a letter of acceptance to join or to apply to the HPSP. That's not true. All right, so you can come in as you're applying, as long as you have a MCAT score of 500 and 124 in each section, you are able to apply to MCAT to the HPSP. And so this will help you with your interview process. And so when you go into speaking with your the schools that you're interviewing with, you're able to say, hey, so our first board is in October. Maybe you want to come in October. Obviously, we're past that now. I don't know what year you're in, but maybe you want to come in October. We board you, and the medical corps says, yeah, we want this person. So now you're going into the interview process and say, hey, I've already been accepted to the health profession scholarship program. My med school is 100% paid for. That will help you with those interview process. So, did you have something, Sir Randall?
No, I was agreeing with you, sir.
Cool. Dr. Shahbodaghi, you have anything to add to that, or are you good?
No, I mean, I think I think you hit all the key points. I would say to you, Sergio, your main job is to keep working, to be an awesome student, keep your GPA up, get the best grades you can. Biology is an excellent degree to have before you go to medical school to give you a good foundation. So yeah, I mean, I think fantastic. I would say continue on. When you get to that 4th year, definitely reach out be proactive for sure. Start working the packet just like everything, right? I mean, if you want to get a amateur radio license, you don't just show up the same day you're going to get the license, right? So there is a process, there's paperwork, there's things that a person needs to do, and so it takes time to gather the documents, to get all the stuff together, and so. You don't want to get your acceptance in April and then try and get the scholarship and start in August. That's not going to work. Why? Because there's people who've been following the process ahead of you. There's people who, you have a great MCAT score. When I was taking the MCAT, getting a 30 or a 35 was considered fantastic. It was out of 45 points at that time. So just because you have a 30 MCAT and a 3.9 GPA, there's these scholarships, I would say, are fairly competitive. So just because you're a good student, if you don't do things in the proper order, then it's going to be tough to get in. So, but yeah, I 100% concur with what all the other speakers have said.
Sir, the inflation hasn't just gone up on the stipend, but also on the
Indeed,
yes. Dad joke of the night.
He had to put one in there.
That's it. You know, I work with First Round Lavic, so you know those dad jokes they roll. I'll bring up Sarnakino again. She asked Dr. Shahbodaghi, what has been the most fulfilling aspect since you've commissioned? This is a great question.
This is a wonderful question. Yeah. Some interesting things, but I would say, obviously this could be different for every person, but one of the things that I absolutely enjoyed the most since I became a second lieutenant and then now, of course, as an Army major, and just as Captain Parham said at the beginning of the program, having recently left active duty as of June 30th and gone over into to the Army Reserve. I would say the thing that I've found the most fulfilling has been the professional development opportunities in conjunction and part and parcel with the wonderful camaraderie. I mean, one of the things that you don't fully appreciate, or at least I did not fully appreciate, but I do appreciate now as an Army reservist versus active duty, is the wonderful camaraderie that you have with your colleagues. You know, everybody is, it's one team, one fight. I know that that's probably a very cliche thing to say, but it truly is a part of it. And also the Army focuses in that same spirit, focuses on building you up as a professional, not just as a physician, not just as an officer, not just as a soldier, but all those things combined, right? And so those parts function better when they're all fully integrated, right? You're a soldier here, you're an officer here, you're a doctor here, you're a professional here, all those elements together. As I said at the beginning of the program, the Army, one of the things that we do the best in the United States Army, just as good, probably better than anybody else in the world, is create professional world-class leaders. And that's one thing I benefited from at every echelon, every level of service, as a lieutenant, as a captain, as a major, the focus on the military professional education, military professional development. And that's been fantastic.
Well, yes, sir. And we talked before the show a little bit. You said you run 3 hospital systems right now.
Yes, so I'm the chief medical officer for a 3 hospital health system. Yep. So we have three hospitals, and I'm the chief medical officer, which is the highest position as far as a medical professional can be. Outside of CEO, I mean, there are some positions who can be CEO, but as far as in a strictly medical role, not a business role, I am the chief medical officer. And and that's, the question is, right, is I'm a fairly young officer as far as for a CMO role. But think of the education, the experience, the training, all the things that the military gives you. My last job as a major was as hospital continuing medical education director at William Beaumont Army Medical Center, the 3rd largest Army hospital in the United States. And so, those type of experiences, and I think the right word here is parlay. Those parlay or translate very well when you go into the civilian world, because you have been at the big $1.2 billion facilities, billion with a B, not an M. And you have those experiences, right? Your hospital commanders, the folks who are going to be at the helm as an 06 colonel, could be 46, 48, right? I mean, on the civilian side, you're looking probably another 10 years before you're going to be the CEO of the 3rd largest hospital in the United States. I mean, that's rare. And so that speaks to our Army professional development and our Army professional education.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Absolutely. And so, Randall, we have a question from SG Jason.
He says he's considered, he wants to know what made you consider HPSP scholarship more than the USUHS scholarship, sir?
Absolutely. This is also an extremely valid question.
Yes.
So, it kind of comes down, I will say this up front, and then we'll get into the meat of it, the heart of the issue, which I'm sure everybody wants to know. But it comes down really to personal preference. But HPSP, we've really talked about pretty heavily, so I think pretty much everybody knows what that is. Now, the core difference between the USUHS Uniformed Services University Program versus HPSP is the type of status that you're in. And why that's important is because it determines the type of payback you have to do. So when a person is in the HPSP scholarship program, you're in a special component of the Army Reserves called the IRR, the Inactive Ready Reserve. And so as part of the IRR, you then will transition to active duty. So you're in medical school, you do your 4 years, transition to active duty as an Army captain, complete your residency, and then you will owe a payback, which is equivalent to the time you spent in medical school or residency, whichever is the greater of those, not to exceed 4 years, or if the residency is greater than 4 years, then it will be greater. But in my case, family medicine is a 3-year residency. I had a 4-year HPSP scholarship, so I owed 4 years. So that is key, because then, so if you're asking me, okay, Major Shahbodaghi, what was your total commitment? Well, I had a 4-year HPSP scholarship. I did 4 years in medical school. I did 3 years in a family medicine residency. I owed 7 years total, right? So 3 years in residency, at times is like neutral because you're in training, and then I owed a 4-year payback. The USUHS program is different in that when you attend Uniformed Services University, you'll be going there as an active duty Army officer. So you will be a second lieutenant on active duty the entire time. You will not be in the Army Reserve. So HPSP, Army Reserve. USUHS, you'll be on active duty. So that does make a big difference. What are the benefits of that? Well, if you're on active duty, you're being paid like you're on active duty. So you're getting your full second lieutenant salary and your full BAS and BAH. So if you're a lieutenant in the infantry or a lieutenant in armor or a lieutenant at Uniformed Services University, you're being paid the same. And that is, as we already mentioned, a substantial amount more than the HPSP stipend. I don't know the exact figures, but it's close to double. Also, you'll be in the National Capital Region in Virginia, Washington, D.C., Maryland area there. And so the BAS, and I'm sorry, the BAH, excuse me, basic allowance for housing for that area is substantial. You're looking at $3,000, $4,000. I don't know the exact, and that information is available publicly online. But you're looking at a very substantial housing stipend in addition to your salary. Also, that time is basically creditable towards your retirement because you're on active duty. Again, you're not. We can talk retirement later, but you're basically full active duty during that time, so that does make a big difference. And you will do all your rotations. So you'll do they have a modified curriculum there, and you can read more about that. But you'll do the first year and a half in the classroom. Then the rest of the time you'll do it on active. You're still on active duty, but you're going to go through your Army rotations. So if you're Army and you go to your Uniformed Services, you'll be there with folks from the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. And so you will rotate at all those hospitals. So you'll go to the Army hospital, you'll go to the Navy hospitals, you'll go to the Air Force hospitals, but you will do all those rotations, all your 3rd-year mandatory rotations, all your 4th-year mandatory, all your 4th-year electives. You'll do all those as an active duty student. There is none of this ADT time because you're on active duty already. And so that does make a very large difference in your pay and also your experience. Right, because if you're on HPSP program, you're going to be a civilian, except for the time that you're on active duty, et cetera. But so you will have basically the autonomy to choose your rotations, et cetera. You have to follow your school rules and those kind of things. But whereas Uniformed Services, you're going to be in the military. Basically, what is Uniformed Services University? Well, just look at the tagline. It's America's medical school, right? So this is the military's medical program. So I don't think either good or bad, but they're just two differences. They're just two very, very different programs. The big thing I think for students to know is that the payback is very different because you're going to owe, and let's see, Captain Parham, I believe it's the minimum payback is 7 years. Is that correct for Uniformed Services?
Oh, so USUHS is our competition.
Okay.
if you will, I'm not exactly sure what the payback is for them, but yeah, I believe it's at least 6 years.
Yeah, I want to say 7. Anyways, don't quote me on official, but yes, it is several years in addition beyond what you'll owe if you do a standard residency. The standard residencies in the United States are 3 years. So that's family medicine, pediatrics, internal medicine, emergency medicine. So if you do those residencies, then you'll have a 3-year residency, you have a 4-year HPSP scholarship. You'll do 7 years of service. Only 4 years of those will be a payback because your residency time is neutral. Whereas in uniform services, you'll still have to go to your residency, which will be however long it is. And then I believe you'll owe, I think it's either 6 or 7 years beyond that. And so that can put you up to some pretty substantial time in service. And so not necessarily good or bad. I just want people to know the facts up front. And so, maybe that's your goal. You want to be on active service your entire career. Wonderful. Well, uniform services might be a fantastic program for you. It's kind of like asking what's the best car. Well, it depends on your needs, right? Different programs are designed to meet different needs. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And so just Sergio had said, great, I'll definitely be contacting you all. Thank you for your service. And so Sergio, like John Randall said, if you have questions, please reach out. His phone number and email, IG, and LinkedIn are all there. He is more than happy to answer your questions. And sir, I told you before we started this whole thing, the HPSP stuff goes so quick. It really does. We don't get to all the things we want. Maybe we want to do it part 2. But what I would like to close with is, what is your favorite moment having been in the Army as a physician?
Wow. Yeah, another good question. I would say my favorite moment probably would be my deployment experience in 2020. Deployed to CENTCOM, was with the 42nd Infantry Division. This was, guys, if you can cast your minds back to 2020, but this was right when COVID was breaking out, brand new, had just come out of China. And all of us were very new to the COVID world, and so was with the infantry, deployed in a combat environment, had a very large COVID outbreak, lots and lots of ill soldiers, had to put soldiers on ventilators in the combat environment with no hard stand structures, very difficult, very difficult situation. But we had our Army medics. We had our Army physician assistants. We had me as a MD, as an Army physician, and the entire team worked flawlessly. Had 6 critically ill soldiers, very sick, and we were able to successfully get all those people intubated on ventilators, fly them to Germany, and I'm happy to report and proud to report that we did not lose a single soldier to COVID, despite being very early in the pandemic and having really no idea at that time how to best provide and care for those soldiers. But there's an old saying, teamwork makes a dream work, and that was absolutely the truth on the ground in the combat environment in CENTCOM, where the enemy was not a physical presence, but was a germ. And our Army combat team came together to save those soldiers' lives, just like we would if it was a combat environment and we were taking hostile fire. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that experience, sir. There's so much that I feel like we have not even tapped into. We didn't even get to the fellowship stuff.
I know. I'm sorry, guys.
We didn't. No. And I told you before, the HPSP, there's so much to discuss that we just don't get to it a lot, right? We don't get to the end of it. So maybe we do a part 2 with this.
Okay.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, because we got to talk about the master's degree, the Army work overseas, the aid teams. I mean, there's lots of stuff here, guys.
And I got to know about tropical medicine. I'm like, how did you get into this, and where did this come from? Because it's just something that it blows my mind. When I was reading, I'm like, tropical, I gotta ask them, So yeah, we got to definitely do a part.
Exactly. You're like, listen, tropical medicine. Yeah, sounds like lots of vacations. You're like, yeah, sign me up.
We're definitely doing a part 2. We're definitely doing a part 2.
Very good.
I'm committed for sure. So, sir, thank you so much. Do you have any last words? We're running out of time here. Do you have any last words for anyone watching right now?
Absolutely, absolutely. I would say consider the HPSP program carefully. Consider all the options that the U.S. Army offers as far as education and recruitment tools. The FAP program, the STRAP program, Uniform Services University, HPSP program. Lots of educational opportunities out there. The U.S. Army, the U.S. military is one of the premier organizations in our country as far as providing education and training to the next generation of our nation's leaders. And there's high levels of public trust in the military for a very good reason. I don't think that trust is misplaced. Obviously, the military program will not be right for every student. And it's important for folks to recognize that. Just because this is a wonderful program and has lots of benefits doesn't mean that you should do it. And I don't ever pressure anybody to do it. You need to be absolutely, you need to absolutely comprehend and understand that when you serve in the military, the key word there is serve, right? So you will be serving the nation and the nation's interests. And so sometimes those interests don't always align 100% perfectly with your personal interests. And so obviously you hope that they align 100%. Like the government wants to send you to Yemen and you also have always wanted to go to Yemen. Okay, beautiful, right? The interests line up perfectly. But sometimes they don't, right? Like, you want to go to California and the Army wants to send you to Georgia. So sometimes they don't. They're just they can be very divergent. And so I want folks to recognize that. If I paid you $100,000 a year to go and be a dog walker and you hate dogs, okay, probably not going to be the best fit. The money's great, but again, probably not going to be the best. And so I just encourage students and folks who are investigating the program. Yes, there are lots of benefits. There's lots of wonderful things about it, but you need to be looking at this in the holistic realm. Look at the whole picture and see overall if this is right for you. Because our goal in the U.S. Army is to have you have a wonderful experience, become a great leader, a great doctor, a great officer. But listen, if you don't think it's going to be good for you, then we're not pressuring you to join. So that would be my final words.
Absolutely, could not agree more. Dr. Shahbodaghi, thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you so much for your experiences. I definitely think that there's a part two to this. There's so much untapped experiences that we haven't even looked into or even mentioned. So thank you so much. If you don't mind, hang out in the back room and we'll
wonderful.
be with you in just a second.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to be on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
So Randall, this is our first time together, right? And I think it was a success. It was good.
I think it was. I enjoyed it. I had fun. And I was kind of shocked that I looked up I didn't even look at the time because I was listening to him answering questions. I'm like, oh man, it's almost over with. I want to do it again, So yeah, I had fun.
Absolutely. We'll set it up. December might be a rough month, but definitely January, February, and we'll look into Nurses Week. We're going to look into Match Day. We're going to look into all these other different things. So thank you so much for joining today and doing it for your first time. It's I told you before, it was a little nerve-wracking for me, my first time. But yeah, just learning the flow of things. So
it's good.
Yeah, let's do it again.
Oh yeah, I see you. See you in the morning, actually.
Yeah, I'll see you in the morning. Go Cowboys.
All right, y'all have a good night. Take care.
Have a great one, son Randall. All right, thank you all for joining in. Very much appreciated. Thank you so much, Major Weaver, for joining in. We miss you very, very, very much. But we will continue this legacy, and we will be back with the 5th Medical Recruiting I lost my train of thought. The the medical recruiting. Anyway, have a great night. Thank you.
You all right?